Howdy, y'all. Welcome back. Today is Tuesday, May 18th, 2021. I'm Trey Crowder, and that he hath returned is Mark Agee. Mark, welcome back. How was Florida with your in-laws?
Fantastic, Trey.
Yeah,
I did. I love Florida both as a place and as a general concept. I love.
yes.
Feels like if there wasn't a place that was just populated with rednecks, rich Yankees, Puerto Ricans, Cuban expats, and CIA agents who retired to run cocaine, then you'd have to invent it. Love it. It's great. I saw a guy drinking with a miniature emotional support horse. So that's probably the most Florida thing I saw.
There it is. I was going to ask you if you didn't have any kind of just summation of the Florida aesthetic, but there you go. I knew you'd have one. Yeah, I think that Florida gets a rap of being the crazy place. That's where the crazy people are, or whatever. But like you just said, just when you break it down the way you just did, it's like, well, yeah, you'll have that in a place that has all those different demographics there in the
I mean,
sun.
the whole place, like, it shouldn't exist. It's like the whole place is crime. Is it like anything south of where the Everglades start is absolutely uninhabitable if you don't pump it dry, which you
Right.
absolutely have to do to put houses there. But like, there's all these stories if you read about anything with the environmental history of Florida about like what would happen was they would invite people down to like scout for winter homes, but they would do it during the winter when when the
Course.
water was low. They would
Right.
sell all these idiot rich Yankees land that would immediately be underwater as soon as summer happened.
Right.
Like that was the basis of the beginnings of the Florida economy, and it hasn't gotten much different since then. So
Yeah, I
there you
kind of have the opposite experience with like New England and like Maine and stuff. I've
go.
literally only ever been there like during the summertime, and I'm like, this is the most picturesque, beautiful part of the world. This is insane.
Mhm.
But you talk to people that live there, who love it, that are like, yeah, you should probably see it in the winter first before you think that. Like it's kind of a whole different
There,
thing.
there is I gotta find it, dig it up. But there's like a congressional testimony from like this army captain who, because like what would happen was people would go down there and then need to be like they would get lost and need to be rescued and stuff. So this guy's testifying in front of Congress, begging them to wall off Florida halfway down so morons can't go down there and get stuff.
Yeah. I mean, hell, we may need a Florida wall.
Yeah.
And people don't talk about that enough. All right, so let's get into the show. I'm Trey. That's Mark. With us as always, producer Matt, producing Mattin. This is Weekly Skews tonight. A long overdue update on the progress of the MAGA world's attempt to stop the steal. Spoiler alert, it is comically absurd. Also, we will be joined by our guest tonight, pollster John Ray, for a discussion on one of our pet topics here on the show, Democrats' efforts to reach rural America, a conversation that I'm sure will be as enlightening as it is encouraging. This
Yeah. There's an article in the Washington Post we're going to reference today with this guy's research, and it's going to make you want to. Yeah, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah. All that and more on tonight's Skews. But first, as always, we begin with the Daily Dumbass. Matt, graphic, please. Tonight's dumbass, you know her, you've missed her, don't lie. It's Marjorie Taylor Greene, who spoke before Congress in opposition to a bipartisan committee being formed to investigate the events surrounding the January 6th Capitol insurrection. What reason could she possibly have for opposing such a commission? Well, why hear from me when we can hear it straight from the bitch horse's mouth? Matt, play the clips, please.
People who breached the Capitol on January 6th are being abused, some even being held for 23 hours a day in solitary confinement.
Okay.
People who breached the Capitol.
You can
All
play it,
right.
Matt.
Yeah,
Or you
Matt,
want to?
play the context clip
Yeah.
that led into that. Okay. we got a text from Matt that just says shit. So you heard what you said. The people involved with the January 6th insurrection are being abused, being held in cells for up to 23 hours a day, and it's horrible how the criminal justice system is treating these people. But the context that preceded that was she said, "Why are we so worried about this when we aren't talking about all of the riots that happened in the wake of George Floyd. So she brought up the Black Lives Matter protest and then talked about how horrifically unjust the criminal justice system with no trace of irony whatsoever, which, who would have thought, but here we are.
Yeah, I mean, one, she's not wrong. Like,
right.
about
the criminal justice system is fucked up. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But she doesn't care that it's fucked up. Like, first of all, her premise, people involved in the George Floyd protest have been arrested a bunch capriciously. Some of them are spending a lot of time in jail awaiting trial. Like, some of them are locked up for like a year or two before they're going to get a date. So the system does grind everyone who protests it up into powder. It's not just the MAGA people. And the American government cracks down much harder on left-wing protest movements. I don't know how to I don't have evidence in front of me, but just take my word for it. If there's the entire history of the FBI and the CIA and how they function and how they work, if you get caught with weed at a left-wing protest, you're going to go into prison for 20 years. If you break into Capitol and where 5 people are killed, you're probably going to get off of probation. And so I don't know. I don't know how to.
Right. The way she kind of talks about, the way she frames it is like she implies that why aren't we doing anything about Black Lives Matter protest and the people that riot at those when we're treating these, the Capitol people so unjustly, which is what makes it all so absurd. Because, of course, that's the whole reason for the former protest is the way the justice system has treated those people for so long. And this is the first time that the other breed has ran into these problems and they're like, man, this is fucked up, y'all. But they still don't care about, the people on the other side who've gotten the same treatment.
Here's a good way to judge the difference. All right. Like, Antifa, people argue about whether it does or not. It's not that it doesn't exist. It's not organized specifically because these people are paranoid about the federal government trying to crush them, right? They don't want to be on any lists. They don't want to have organized meetings because the federal government will infiltrate them and try to put them in prison. These Proud Boys and Oath Keepers are just having random committee meetings on Zoom and Facebook because they know nobody's going to fuck with them, right? Some of them have been infiltrated and stuff, but they're not paranoid about it. And like the circus around the people that got arrested, they're focusing on the silly, weird people, the Q shaman, who we'll get to in a second, for an unrelated thing, and a bunch of other dumb shit, because it makes for good B-roll. But like, if this was a left-wing protest, whoever the left-wing equivalent of Roger Stone and Steve Bannon would be in cuffs, right? I don't think that's really up for much debate.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you. Matt and Mark, listen to me. Actually, I want to make sure we get to at least the next 2 dumbasses we have. So let's please move on to them. We're not, I think we'll save the quote from the Q Shaman's attorney because you have got to hear it if you haven't. But I want to move on to the next thing just to make sure we can cover this. So our first honorable mention tonight is anyone who thinks that masks won't protect you from the kinds of dipshits who would wear masks. What the hell does that mean? Well, it turns out, it seems, that many anti-vaxxers and anti-maskers out there have landed on the idea that the only way to protect themselves from us on the left and our lunatic mask and conspiracy theories is to wear masks. Because how else are they going to be safe from us? So they have started wearing masks to protect them from the people who wore masks to begin with.
Yeah, so they think if you got the mRNA vaccine, it's infected you with a contagion where you're now shedding deadly particles and could cough on them and give them the vaccine. I don't really understand, but anyways, so they do understand the germ theory of disease and do believe that masks work now, right? But not before, right?
Yes, but it's not just to protect them from the harmful vaccine coughs that those of us who have been vaccinated might spread to them in public. They also are, of course, doing it to own the libs. Matt put up that next screen grab there. Look at this. Caitlin Bennett, who says, might just start wearing a mask again now that the CDC says you don't need to if you get the jab. Wouldn't want to give off the impression that I'm a vaccinated Democrat. So this is one of those things where it's like, they're getting there way too late. But like, I think so often we can, if we really organize an effort to, we could just trick these people into doing the things we wanted them to do by like somehow
Yeah.
making them think that we want the opposite, or
Yeah.
Obama says you should do the opposite. Then they'll do it just for that reason, if for no other.
Yeah, it's kind of like how they always threaten to nationalize Twitter whenever a conservative gets banned from it.
Yeah, right.
It's like, oh, you want the workers to own the means of production now? Interesting.
Exactly. Yes, as soon as a big corporation starts doing some liberal shit, they're always like, well, maybe we need to seize this corporation's assets, give it to the people.
They skip right over liberalism, go straight to full-on communism.
Right.
Full-on communism. And it's
going communist to own the libs, man.
Hell yeah, baby.
All right. So here's the next honorable mention in today's Daily Dumbass segment. The governor of Oklahoma forever thinking that Joe Biden could pry Polynesian sauce out of our cold, dead hands. If you haven't seen this, we are in the middle of the great chicken sauce shortage of 2021. Oklahoma's Governor Kevin Stitt has blamed Joe Biden for Chick-fil-A's sauce shortage, and he's not the only one. They are fired up about this.
Yeah, so one, this was sent out in a fundraising email, so he thinks it's going to be effective getting people to send in cash. And I don't think I need to tell you that Oklahoma's Republican governor is in no danger of losing to a Democrat, no matter what he does. So I don't know why he he could run for re-election with 10 cents. It wouldn't matter. So please don't give this idiot any money. But he wasn't the first guy I saw this from. Ted Cruz tweeted this last week. And honestly, I was like, this is actually pretty funny. I thought it was a joke, right?
Yes.
Just like, they're like, it's not Chick-fil-A has a sauce. Joe Biden is destroying America. That's actually the first funny thing Ted Cruz ever did. But then I realize he's not kidding.
Right. That's the thing. Like that. It seems like some of the things they do are so absurd. You will laugh at it first. You're like, there's no way this is sincere, right? But it is completely sincere. Yeah. So because
then Lauren Boebert
shared an article that said Chick-fil-A sauce shortage, and he said Joe Biden is destroying America. Then Lauren Boebert said the same thing. The Hill had an article. Chick-fil-A has a sauce shortage. That's all it says. And Boebert said, "Is there no limit to how awful Biden's America can get?" See, this is the sort of undercurrent for this for me, and we've talked about it before on the show. And part of me is glad that we're back to this, but it's like these are the things that amount to scandals for them. You know, when we are in power, like when Trump was in power, the things we were upset about every other week was, treason, dead black people, no vaccines, you name it, like literal human lives being lost. But whenever Democrats are in power, it's tan suits, mustard stains, and now Chick-fil-A sauces. But because what else do they have to get spun up about? Do you know what I mean? Like, privileged white Republican people, what problems do they have other than I can't get the sauce I want with the chicken I want that I primarily want because I know how much it hurts the gays or whatever from 8 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't. Whenever we get off of this line, the lefty in me wants to point out all the fucked up shit that the Biden administration. I mean, overall, I have a few specific complaints
for sure. I'm not trying to say that they're unassailable. That's not what I mean. There's things that
they're from the right.
Us to get mad about. There's things for us to be mad about, but like for them, when they've got to like generate a scandal or whatever, it's we don't have the chicken sauce we want.
It almost made me feel funny. I could feel bad for Ted Cruz because he had a pretty funny bit going, and then a bunch of his. But it's like he knows this is a joke or a stupid issue, and he's trying to gin up the rubes who vote for him. But he forgot that a bunch of other rubes also served with him, and they ruined his joke. That's what's really funny to me. But what I surfed across this working on the show today, and I do want to show this clip of this Australian news service trying to cover this. And this is a good example of how gross and fat and dumb and stupid they think we are. Listen to this lady try to describe how we eat Chick-fil-A.
Reason as to why Joe Biden is copying blame for the shortage of sauce is because there's been a massive fuel shortage across several states in the US as a result of the Colonial Pipeline cyber attack. Chick-fil-A released a statement apologising. Due to industry-wide supply chain shortages, some items, like sauces, may be unavailable. We apologise in advance for any inconvenience. They've told customers there will only be 1 sauce per entree, 2 sauces per meal, and 3 sauces per 30-count chicken nuggets. Social media erupted with President Biden copping it. Texas Senator Ted Cruz was quick to slam Biden with a simple message: Joe Biden is destroying America. Republican politician Josh Mandel wrote, "In Joe Biden's America, Chick-fil-A has to limit sauces because of supply chain issues. Gas stations are having mass shortages and prices are soaring." Laverne Spicer wrote, "Chick-fil-A is out of sauce. Joe Biden is officially messing with our chicken. It's a problem."
All right, so there's a part of the clip that I really wanted to show that we I think skipped past, but she goes, they're limiting the sauce. Americans go crazy for it. It's ranch and mustard and barbecue sauce all mixed together. Now that is not a thing. I've read a list of the sauces, and yeah, that's all right, Matt. Don't worry about it. All right, let's move on.
No, but still, even in that part we show where it's like explaining Americans' outrage, it's like, here's what they're so upset about. Chick-fil-A has told them you can only get 1 sauce per, what was it, 1 sauce per entree, 2 sauce per combo meal, or 3 sauces per 30-piece chicken nugget. And it's just the implication. It's like, no, when we eat 30 goddamn chicken nuggets, we need at least 7 to 8 sauces. Like the outright, like 3 sauces that's not enough sausage. Which, hey, I'm not saying I don't agree with the premise there, but that it would lead to this outrage is obviously absurd. But yes, in the other part of the clip, they explain the sauce we're upset about, when really, of course, it's America. It's all the sauces we're upset about, Mark.
Yeah.
It's a shortage for all of them, goddamn it. It's not one particular sauce, but they seem to think that it's one specific sauce that is this like alchemical amalgamation of all of the fattest sauces on the earth mixed into one, and that's what we dip our fried homophobic chicken into.
They described like
this.
You know, when you were a kid, you go to the soda fountain and mix all the drinks together.
Yeah,
they describe the sauces. Yeah, they describe the sauces like that. Yeah. But it's like, but it is funny. Like, I wonder why people were like, there was a gas store. Unless you needed to drive across country in the middle of last week, it was no big deal. But I was like, oh, now I get why people were hoarding gas. They needed to go to Chick-fil-A repeatedly to get enough sauces. So now I get it.
Right.
All right. You want to move on to the
Yes, let's get into it. Like I said, big update on what's going on with stopping the steal, and it's very dumb. And Mark, take us into it.
All right. So we talked about the Arizona recount or audit side. They already did 2 recounts. This is the audit of the 2 recounts. So it's become a full-on clown show. It's even embarrassing half the state's Republicans. This is a story from yesterday. This is from Vice. Even Republicans think stealing Arizona for Trump is a disaster. The Republican-led Board of Supervisors put out this letter. These are 4 out of 5 of this board are Republicans, and they said you have ruined. You have rented out the once good name of the Arizona State Senate to grifters and con artists who are fundraising hard-earned money from our fellow citizens, hunting for bamboo and something they call kinetic artifacts while shining purple lights for effect. None of these things are done as serious audit. The results, the Arizona Senate is held up to ridicule in every corner of the globe, and our democracy is imperiled. Now, you know, people don't usually get that mad in government documents.
Right.
So the funny part was, so Cyber Ninjas, who we talked about a couple weeks ago. So Cyber Ninjas took a box that everybody knew had 200 ballots in it. And when they counted it, they got 218 ballots. There's a huge paper trail. So they added 18 votes for Trump and just thought no one would fucking notice, and immediately got busted. Now, they can't even count to 200. And the important thing they need to know here is they're supposed to count 2.1 million ballots. Right. So at this rate, they're going to count 2.1 million ballots and end up with about 2.25 million ballots. So that's going to go great. But they seem to be pivoting away from Arizona because it's getting really obviously embarrassing, and Arizona Republicans.
Hang on before you get to that, because I know you're going to circle back to this. I think because one of the people behind one of these things is about to come up when you get into New Hampshire and everything. But also the methodology is absurd, because they literally were at one point scanning for bamboo artifacts on the ballots,
Yeah.
because obviously that would mean that it came from China, because everybody in China just got bamboo fingers. That's how
Yeah.
they work. They're all just,
The
panda bears in disguise.
pandas are
over
working
there.
at the ballot factory,
Yeah,
and
right. They got
they're
panda bears
they're snacking on
defrauding our
bamboo.
election
Yeah.
while shining purple lights for effect, and looking for something called kinematic artifacts. So they literally just make up things that sound like conspiracy-y. Kinematic
Yeah.
artifacts. You guys heard about this? But this is an actual, high-level audit in a state involved with the presidential election. They're just making up these X-Files-y sounding words. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah. The Republican. So this guy who took over as Maricopa County. This audit's happening in Maricopa County. This guy took over as the election. I forget his actual title, but he runs the elections in Maricopa County. He won the election. Trump lost in November. He just took office in January. He beat a Democrat, and he's already horrifically embarrassed and getting death threats. And Trump put up on his blog. Trump has a shitty little WordPress blog now. That's how he communicates with the world.
Yeah.
And he put on a thing saying that like a bunch of the whole election database got deleted. And the guy did a Twitter thread. I'm sitting on my computer looking at the database right now. You're a moron. This is dangerous. Yada yada yada. He went on CNN. So anyway, Republicans in Arizona, there are enough of them with backbone where this isn't going the way they want, and it's becoming embarrassing. So they have pivoted to a state delegate recount in New Hampshire. So New Hampshire is now the biggest part of the Arizona audit.
Because there's no way this will turn out to be embarrassing.
No. So there's an article, throw up the screen grab, how Trumpists are trying to hijack a small town New Hampshire ballot audit. So MAGA world is sending up on this little town called Windham, New Hampshire. All right. So it's just to settle questions about a state representative race, because there's it was an 8-way race for 4 state rep seats. I don't know how they do shit in New Hampshire. It's complicated, I guess. But four Republicans won those seats. So a Democrat only lost by 24 votes, asked for a recount. After the recount, she ended up losing by like 4 times that amount or something. So she was like, we should look into this. And it was a bipartisan group of state legislators like, yeah, that's like, it seems like a pretty big discrepancy. So we should like double check what happened. Maybe it's a mistake. Anyway, so it took like sincere concerns about maybe a miscount or a flaw in a ballot design or a machine problem or whatever. And it was spun into a huge conspiracy that's going to make Trump win New Hampshire and therefore be president, which doesn't even make any sense. So, but it's become a huge, like if you don't follow, this is the biggest thing happening in the world, according to MAGA people, right? This is going to change. There's going to be a huge earthquake that changes everything. Steve Bannon is in on it. Seb Gork is doing stuff. It's turned into a giant shit show. Now, we want to help you understand the lens of what all this is happening through one guy named Jovan Pulitzer. It's not his real name. We'll get to that in a second. Jovan is who the MAGA types are pushing to be put in charge of this New Hampshire recount. And he's important because he's also been a big figure to them in the Georgia recount and the Arizona recount. He is the guy who came up with this bamboo conspiracy theory back during the Georgia. Like we don't know where it came from. It came from Georgia back in December. And here, if Matt, you have that clip of him testifying from the Georgia.
Did you know from a forensic level that you can tell absolutely the difference between paper here in the United States or paper that was made in China? There's different formulations.
All right. So he's the bamboo guy. He looks perfectly sane, right, Trey?
Right. Yes. Now, in one of these clips, he said he was talking about himself, and he said, really, what I am is I'm a geek or a nerd in the body of a
biker's body. Yeah.
A biker's body. You guys saw him there. How bad? I mean, undeniably badass that guy is. I mean, yeah, he's sort of girthy, I suppose, but not what I think of when I think of bikers.
So,
but that's the least of this guy's insanity. So go on.
No. Yeah, so actually, this guy, we didn't physically cross paths, but he was a big factor in my life about 20 years ago, and I didn't even know it. So he invented this device called a Q-Cat. Do you know what the Q-Cat is, Trey? That's how he made his money.
I didn't before we were getting ready for this. But
so when I lived in Dallas, the Q-Cat was all the rage in Dallas because he lived in Dallas, and
really
he partnered with Radio Shack. And Radio Shack was pushing the Q-Cat. And the way the Q-Cat worked, this was back in the early stages of the internet, you'd hook it up like through a mouse port, and it was designed to look like a little plastic cat, but it'd scan QR codes. Now, there'd be a QR code like on items, or for example, a newspaper that's a rival to the one I worked for put QCAT codes at the bottom of the stories. If you scan the code, it would take you to you would open up your internet browser and take you to the newspaper's website to look at articles with similar content or that article specifically. So you'd have to take the physical copy of the newspaper, scan it with the QCAT, and go to the same article on the internet. That was amazing technology in 2002.
Yes, and the QCAT has been multiple times regarded as literally one of the worst gadgets ever made. I also
It's stupid.
Essentially, but like the thing is, that sounds like a QR code, which is a thing now. A QR code is.
Yeah.
But A, he didn't invent that general concept. He just made it into a cat. And
Yeah.
B, it's like at that time, not everybody had a device in their pocket that could scan something like that. It was basically a replacement for typing in a URL and pushing enter at that time, because it had to be hooked up to your computer. Like you could just type that in, but instead you got a little cat device to do it for you.
Yeah, I mean, the highest level of use for this, like you scan a can of Coke and it would take you to coupons for get more Coke. That'd be like the highest level use. Anyway, it didn't work out. Radio Shack's out of business. I don't even notice. But that's how he made his money. But he got so wildly panned, like Mark Cuban wrote a blog about it, and then this guy's wife left him, and he openly blamed Mark Cuban for his wife leaving him. So there you go.
Yes. He also, in addition to describing himself as a geek in the body of a biker, he also has described himself in his bio as a, quote, somewhat reclusive genius with the technical know-how of Bill Gates, the daring of Richard Branson, the marketing genius of Sam Walton, all mixed up with a little touch of Ted Turner and the media hype that surrounds Donald Trump. He said he has every day he's on over 12 billion devices worldwide. So this is how this dude describes himself. So I mean, pretty important guy. Yeah.
If you wonder what makes him an expert on computer security / election security, QCAT got hacked real bad. One of the reasons we went out of business. So his LinkedIn page says he's taken free online classes at Harvard and Stanford. So this is the guy you want to go to save democracy.
Again, this is their guy. Like, just so y'all know, like, this is the dude. They all are clamoring for this dude to be the guy in charge. That's why we're talking about him. Yeah.
So just to run through this real quick, he changed his name to try to obscure his Google results. I forget what his real name is. It doesn't matter, but it's not Jovan Pulitzer. And he also created his own Wikipedia to try to obscure his Google search history. I don't mean he made his own page. I mean, he's made his own fucking Wikipedia. All right. He's an absolute lunatic. And he's also an amateur treasure hunter. That's how he's been killing his time as a rich person. Since but between overturning running coups and inventing the QCAT, he's become an amateur treasure hunter, and that didn't go well for him either. Let's look at this clip of him on the History Channel, Matt.
In the bottom of this hole is going to be some of the most important pieces of treasure to mankind. We're talking about the Ark of the Covenant.
The Ark of the Covenant? The gold chest, which according to the Old Testament contained the actual 10 Commandments?
To be clear, he's claiming to have found the Ark of the Covenant in Canada. That's what he's saying.
He found a hole in Canada.
Canada. And he also, in the same show, he claimed to have found an ancient Roman sword that proved Romans sailed to Canada. And it took about 10 minutes for people to get on eBay and find copies of the same sword. He just found a plastic sword and thought Romans were in Canada.
I'm gonna give this to everybody else because I like it so much. Our guest John Ray, who's in the green room we're about to bring out here, said in the show chat, that scene looks like an AA meeting for people who have lost their families as opposed to ancient treasures. And that's funny. I'm gonna like this guy. Let's go ahead and get to him. This is our guest tonight, John Ray, who is a director of polling at YouGov Blue, where he does polling for progressive issues and candidates. A native of Louisville, Kentucky, he's worked for local, state, and national candidates across the country since 2006 and has recently been focused on polling rural America. So let's get him out here. John Ray.
Howdy, folks. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for being here. That was a great joke, man. I love it.
Well, I I just want to say for all that time that you just spent on a guy who claims to be a geek in a biker's body, I appreciate you taking equal time for geeks who are just geeks in fucking geeks bodies.
Just
so,
geeks bodies, yeah, man.
Pleasure
That's what I'm
to
talking
be
about.
here.
Yeah, it's nice to have somebody who's math literate on the show for once. It's gonna be nice.
So Matt put up a screen grab of an article, an opinion article in the Washington Post that just went out there that was using data from your organization and the polling you get that had to do with Democratic's efforts in rural America, right? And it was centered around the stimulus checks. And what it found was that many rural Americans are not crediting the Democratic Party for the stimulus checks. Only 50% of rural voters are doing that. 32% associate the stimulus checks with the GOP and give Republicans credit for it. And another 11% don't credit either party. Although almost 70% of them support the stimulus checks in general. So let's get into it. What's going on with that?
Yeah, yeah, for real. So this is some polling that we did specifically on rural voters who live in what we call the battleground states, which are going to be the most important states that come up in the 2022 cycle. And so, what we found, the good news is it's going to be kind of a really mixed story here, but the good news is that among rural voters, Democrats' policies are quite popular. We got large majorities saying that they support things like the key components of the American Rescue Plan, like you just said, the stimulus checks, key elements of the infrastructure plan that's going to get proposed soon, like eliminating lead from our water pipes, super popular, over 70 to 80% support among rural voters, including majorities of Republicans and independents, which is always great. The problem is the Democrats are facing is that a lot of these voters are actually attributing these policies to Republicans. Republicans are getting a lot of credit for the things that Democrats stand for. So like you just said, about a third of rural voters give Republicans credit for the stimulus checks. That includes an outright majority of Republicans and as many independents who say that the Republicans are doing this, who also say that, who think the Democrats are doing this. So basically a split. Similarly, one of our really big winner policies that we've proposed for rural voters recently pertain to expanding access to broadband internet in rural areas. And almost a quarter of voters think that Republicans are the ones doing that, and not Democrats. So on the one hand, we've got good policies. On the other hand, a lot of rural voters think Republicans are responsible for them.
So, in your opinion, I mean, what is the cause for that? Is it the Democrats' brand? Is it propaganda? What is the reasoning for that? For these people feeling that way?
Yeah, so we really tried to press voters on that exact question in the same survey. So what we did was we said, we ran people through these policies the Democrats or Republicans might support, and then finally we said, okay, look. Now imagine, okay, here's some policies that Democrats are proposing. And, do you support or oppose these policies? And we asked sort of similar things. And we found that support for them was pretty good. But in a follow-up question, we asked, okay, now let's think of these same policies that Democrats have proposed. Are they proposing them because they sincerely want to make your life better? Or are they proposing them as a sort of cynical way to pander to rural voters? And for Democrats, voters overwhelmingly thought, even for the policies that they supported, when the voters supported, when they thought Democrats were the ones supporting them, they really thought, they sort of interpreted that cynically. It's like Democrats just want to win my vote. They don't sincerely believe in the problems that I'm facing. Now, one thing that's important to keep in mind there is that a lot of rural voters, and we can sort of jump into this a little bit more as we go on, are almost as cynical of the Republican Party as they are of Democrats. Right. But one of the big takeaways we saw here is that even considering that, voters were pretty skeptical of first of all, what Democrats are doing in the first place, and then second of all, their motivations for what they do.
Right. I mean, when you said they were cynical of both parties, I've told people plenty of times, because it's the truth. From my perspective as a kid growing up in the rural South, the way I remember it, I would have described most people as being apolitical, actually. It was this attitude of, they're all full of shit. None of them give a damn about us, and fuck them, basically, like for both sides. I'm sure a lot of those people were registered Republicans or whatever, but that was the sort of general sentiment. And which is part of the reason it was so surprising to me when it became like kind of Trump country and they really dove in on the, identity politics of being associated with the MAGA world and that part of the GOP. Do you think that, so they obviously don't believe that Democrats are actually sincerely concerned about them. Do you think that has anything to do with, or how much that is affected by the sort of like stereotype of Democrats representing coastal elites who all think that you're dumbasses and fly over country and that type of thing? Like they look down upon you, so there's no way they could believe that your interests are genuine and, you're just trying to game us. Like, is that the kind of mentality?
Yeah, so I think there's two things there. We can talk about sort of the Democrats specifically, and we'll sort of talk about rural voters' views of sort of politics, sort of broadly speaking. So when it comes to, Democrats, we ask voters to tell us like, okay, here are some things that are important to people. When you think of this thing, do you associate that more with the Democrats or with the Republicans? And here's one of the things that really, really sort of surprised me. So on the one hand, voters do have this feeling that in some sense, Republicans really do cater to the wealthy. Okay, so in some areas, it's a bit of a mixed bag. But we also ask people things like, okay, which of these parties, if you had to pick the Democrats or the Republicans, which of these parties is controlled by corporate lobbyists? They actually said that the Democrats were the ones with that problem. Quite a bit higher than they said the same for Republicans. It wasn't, 100 and 0, but it was, something like 60-40 or something like that. Democrats being the ones associated with sort of, corporate elite, which I think is a different thing from, this party is for wealthy people. This is a specific thing of like for like elite interests and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm sorry. Go on.
Yeah. And so I think, sort of on that same point though, something else that I think maybe people don't appreciate is that if you really sort of dig in on what rural voters say their priorities are, the things they actually support or oppose a policy is one thing, but the things that I actually prioritize is I think a different question. And so if you go and you ask people, okay, here's a set of policies. Do you think this is like a really big problem in your area that we need to sort of do more about? So we sort of try to get at, what are the policy, what are the issues that are like really important for your type of place as a way to sort of get at this question of sort of what are particular sort of rural voter concerns. And I think something that's important for people to understand is that a lot of the sort of national conversation about rural voters is actually missing a lot of their priorities. So, I'm sure, most of us are from rural areas, are from sort of quote unquote flyover country. We're probably sort of aware of this, but for example, if you ask rural voters, problems that farmers have faced during COVID, farmers in agribusiness, only about a third of rural voters really say that's like a unique problem to the kind of place that they live in. And I think there's this stereotype in the rest of the country about like, you think rural America, you think farming. What we actually found were like some of the biggest issues that rural area voters said. Tell me if any of these sound familiar. I know we've got some folks in Southern California on at the moment. The sort of biggest problems that they said that they thought were particular to rural areas were the rising cost of caring for seniors, the rising cost of housing. Tell me if there's any Southern California coastal elites on the podcast who think that might be an issue as well. The rising cost of childcare and the rising cost of educating your kids. Which obviously are problems that the whole country faces. So one thing that I think is really important for us to understand is that when we talk about rural voters, I think there might be a tendency to think that we're talking about, farmers, or are we just are we talking about this sort of like magical place that we see in like a Matthew McConaughey movie or something? Like we're talking about our fellow Americans. I think that's really important to keep in mind.
Yeah, sure. Future governor of Texas, Matthew McConaughey.
Exactly.
So when I read the data in that article, some of it was infuriating at first, but then the more I thought about it, it's like, it's actually like, you add up 32 and 11, it's like, okay, well, 57% of people are still open to crediting Democrats with the stimulus check, and then it's like, it's like, okay, well, 32% associated with the GOP, but Trump was president. Mitch McConnell controlled the Senate when they passed the first term. Like, so it's like, okay, maybe, because my first takeaway was like, holy shit, they're so caught up in a propaganda bubble that no noise can break through, and people don't even understand what they're voting for. And then you get into really deep existential questions like, what is the point of democracy if people can't understand what's happening enough to vote based on it? You know, so so what is the point of democracy, I guess, is my question there, John.
Buckle up.
I think that, I mean, like, it is. So me and Mark have said repeatedly ever since Biden took office and everything, don't worry about working with the Republicans. All you got to do is worry about passing Democratic policies. Democratic policies ostensibly are meant to help people. If that is actually true, if you're not full of shit and they really do work that way, then pass the policies, you help people, and you'll be fine. People will understand that, and you'll be okay. You won't have to face this big backlash or whatever. But if when you do that, they give the credit for that to the other side, then, you know, what are you supposed to do? What else is there left to do other than just keep trying to help people and hope it works out? What else is what is the other strategy? Do
the right thing for its own sake, Trey. What a revolutionary idea.
But you have to stay in power, though, you know?
Yeah, I'll interject. Like, the comical example of this is like, Trump put his name all over the first stimulus, and Biden made a big show of refusing to take any credit for the second one. Would not put it like the people try to be like, hey, put your name on the check. It's like, nope, not going to do it. Right. So it's like Democrats think like taking credit for the shit you gave people is like uncouth. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it sounds like we all probably agree that might be a mistake, or have certain tactical limitations, or however you want to put it diplomatically. But I think the first thing that Trey said is really important to think about, because in this data we kind of try to dive in and figure out, okay, people attribute some stuff to Republicans, but they're not terrible. It's like you were saying, it's sort of like 40-20 or 40-10 or something. It's not 100-0. So people kind of have an inkling of sort of what's going on here. Who are the people who are either they're there's this one question, like, who are the people who are just completely wrong? And as it turns out, the people who are completely wrong, a huge share of them are these like massively motivated Republican partisans who are likely not going to be in what you might call a target universe. They're the folks who are watching Fox News. They're the folks who haven't switched a vote in the last 3 or 4 elections. They're the folks who, in some sense, are sort of motivated, sort of in their minds, to think about, like, if it's a thing that I like, Republicans must be responsible for it. If we kind of dig around in the data a little bit more and find these people who, maybe they mistrust both parties. These people who go, like you said, because I agree with you. I think there's a bigger problem of voters who just feel like the whole system sucks and both parties are pieces of shit. And I think in the rural areas, that's sort of the thing that we should be talking about. Because if you look at those people who are, depending on how you measure it, somewhere between 30, 40, 50% of voters in these areas who have just low trust in both parties in general, something that's interesting about them is that, because they are mistrustful of both of the parties, they're not getting their news about them from the places where, like, political lunatics like you or I get our news about stuff. They're not watching MSNBC. They're not watching Fox News. They're actually this whole cohort of people who are younger than the average voter. Doesn't say much in rural America. It's like, the average voter in the sample is somewhere in the 50s, so this isn't saying all that much, but they're younger, and they also are significantly more likely to be getting their news from places where neither of the parties are traditionally targeting their average campaigns in the first place. So the folks who kind of feel like both parties suck, who are sort of maybe persuadable in some measures, are actually much more likely to say they get their news from podcasts, get their news from Reddit, Twitter, places like their Discord communities or online gaming communities. And I think what's really important about that is, because Democrats have this messaging problem, and because we're sort of on the back footing in a lot of rural areas, it's really important for us to think about the messengers that we deploy when we go to take credit for these things that we should be taking credit for. And I know we all just spent 14 months resisting the urge to start a podcast. I know every
We
single
did
one.
it. We did
Mark
it.
did it.
And you gave in.
We probably should have resisted it, but hey, here we are.
Yeah.
And you did the right thing, because I think there's this. I know this is the first time anyone's ever said it was a good thing that you began a podcast. I know it's not a popular take, but because these younger voters who are paying less attention to either side's partisan outlets are actually making more and more use of this type of medium. This is an important place to become sort of a trusted messenger for the policies that you agree with, the values that you hold in the party that you support.
Sorry.
No. Go ahead, Mark. I feel like I've monopolized it so far.
I was like the thing. I mean, the thing that depresses me is a lot of stuff depresses me. I should be more specific. But when you negativity towards the idea of government is always going to benefit Republicans, right? So the cynicism, I get what we're saying here, where they're not attached to parties, but thinking that everyone in government's a piece of shit who can't be trusted is I don't know, it's bad to me.
Well, it's kind of de facto Republican, you mean? That 30 Rock joke where it was not everybody's Republican. Some of them are Christians. And he's like, yeah, we count those. Those are Republican. Some people write in Jesus. That's what it was. Some people write in Jesus Christ. Those are Republican. We count those.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing. I mean, it is worrying. So I guess I just want to know, John, how can people keep up with your stuff and what you're doing and the organizations you're involved with? And, if they have an interest in it, how can they find it and stay in touch with it? And then also, if you have any sort of big kind of takeaways that we haven't touched on, what people need to know about rural America and the Democratic ideal there or whatever. And if you don't, that's fine. If you're like, fuck, I don't know, that's fine. But whatever you got, just hit us with it.
Yeah. So I think what we're going to see in the next cycle is it's going to be important for us to think about candidates who are capable of building kind of a personal brand that sets them apart from either party establishment. And we know Republicans are already quite astute at doing this.
Right.
You're from Tennessee. You've seen a million 30-year incumbents who are campaigning as the outsider. Right. Every Republican incumbent campaigns on reform. And I think it's going to be important for us to think about ways for Democrats to do that. Some of the really trusted messengers in rural areas that we found include, not just, doctors and teachers, religious figures, veterans. You want to think about having a good set of candidates that sort of help us cover these sort of trusted messengers who aren't necessarily wedded to one sort of party ID or the other, but are also able to sort of communicate the fact that these things that we all sort of stand for, these things that we agree on that are sort of wildly popular, when you have the opportunity, I know it's 2 weeks is Memorial Day, so we're all a couple of weeks away from being trapped in a traffic jam with our family members. There's never going to be a bad time to sort of make sure it's really clear who supports what. And I think to Democrats' credit, I think they have been quite good, at least in sort of the media that I follow, have been quite good in calling out Republicans who, are trying to host those meetings that are like, oh, come learn about the small business benefit that they, of course, fucking voted against. I think Democrats have been pretty good about that stuff, and I'll be curious to see if it ends up having any sort of consequences. But in the meantime, I think last cycle we had a lot of really strong candidates who were sort of able to overperform by having that sort of personal brand, where I think of them as, the candidate first, and then, maybe a Democrat. I think that actually does do something. So that's sort of something that I hope to see more of kind of going forward in rural America. And then also that's the thing I was sort of saying about the importance of having trusted messengers. And again, loonies like y'all who are running podcasts and actually dealing with doing the whole rigmarole. I know it sounds a little bit like ass kissing, but I genuinely think it's the good work. Easiest place to follow me. I tweet every insipid thought that passes between my ears. I'm at John L. Ray. And YouGov, it's YouGov. I don't know. Pick up The Economist. Kind of, wherever.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, John. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I opened it with a great joke. Always a great way to come in. So we really appreciate you joining us. And keep
thanks, John.
Keep doing it, man. Appreciate it.
You too.
John Ray, everybody. Yeah. All right. So listen, Mark, I know we had a topic we were going to bring up at this point, but actually it's kind of evergreen, I think. So let's
All right, we'll
save
save
because
it.
I definitely want to talk about it in the future. But everybody give us your questions and comments on what you think about anything we covered tonight. But, Democrats in rural America or the lunacy of the ballot recounts or any of that. But yeah, I just, it's one of those because like people, that's one of the most common questions I ever get asked when I'm doing any kind of interview. It's like, well, what can we do to like reach these people? And I've changed that answer multiple times. And lately, my go-to has been what we've talked about on the show, like, just now that we have some power, just get some shit done, and people will respond, which I still like want to believe in. But it's like, it's just discouraging to think that people see that and attribute it to the Republicans or whatever. And it's like, just what can you do? What can you do?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like if the old rule, like I was joking about what's the point of democracy, but if the old, we don't know if the old rules apply or not. Plus, people are pretty savvy and cynical now, so they will give wrong answers to pollsters to own the people they don't like, right? I do think when it comes down to voting their actual pocketbook, when they walk into the booth and they have to choose between their kid getting a good school or not, I think it's going to come out to people who are trying to give their kids good schools. I just in my heart I have to believe that, or otherwise, what's the point of the whole American experiment?
Because what else do we have if we can't believe in that? Yeah, I agree with you completely. Monica Hansmeyer says Dems need to refocus on the working class. Yes, that's another thing I've been saying that for forever. It's like it seems like the most, and we've talked about it on here plenty of times before too. It seems like the most obvious thing that they could possibly do. And I mean, they I don't know. They are making some efforts, but it could be better.
This sounds so counterintuitive, but one of the things that's most popular across the board in American politics right now is raising taxes on rich people. Not even to pay for X, just take money from rich people. And
they don't need it all, God damn it.
I mean, and Democrats Biden had originally proposed raising taxes on people that make over $400,000 a year, and Democrats are in the process of talking themselves out of it. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to cut back on social spending, because we don't have to get into like monetary theory and all that shit right now. But it's not necessarily taxes don't. I mean, they've never been connected to spending. We spend way more than we take in from taxes. It's whatever.
Right.
But people make more than $400,000 are not a large group of people. I'm not in that group, definitely. And I don't understand how many voters you think you're going to lose by doing that, because people don't vote straight up. I mean, what we just talked about, rural voters, like voting against the people they're trying to give them broadband. It's like people don't vote their pocketbook straight up. They just don't. Like people vote based upon chicken sauce shortages and shit. Like it's stupid, but it's true. So like, fucking raise their taxes and see if you can get an angle at it. I don't understand.
Well, here's a question for you, Mark. John Burton says, how can we keep the Arizona recount from turning into a snowball going downhill? I guess it's like they've already moved to New Hampshire for the next one, and I guess it's sort of like is like just this continuing to be a thing.
Well, I mean, like,
and them getting more and more into it.
The danger in here is just like the whole part, so Georgia's lieutenant governor just announced he's not running for re-election whenever he's up, like a year or two or whatever. Like Donald Trump has harassed that guy out of politics for doing his job. He's a Republican, right? So the party has basically ejected everyone who's not willing to do a coup, and that's the real danger here. I don't think Democrats realize that Biden could win by 14 points in 2024, but if Republicans control the House, he might not get certified. And then what? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know what happens after that. So I don't think they're really walking through the ramifications of what it means if it doesn't matter if he wins Georgia and Arizona, if they have Republican legislatures, it just doesn't. So unless they will pass some similar voting rights reform and overcome the filibuster, none of this might matter. Is the thing about it. So like nothing's going to happen in Arizona except what they're doing is testing to see who will go along with this fucking bullshit and promoting the people who will and eliminating the people who won't, because they're not doing anything in Arizona. They're getting momentum going for the next coup. Yeah. So.
Kim Shea 22 on YouTube says, I think it's too late for that snowball. And I mean, I think it's like the factors the support that is behind all of that being such a thing is going to continue to be there, I think. But like, they're not going to just give up on it. You know what I mean? Like, to move on to New Hampshire, it'll be on to the next thing before long. Steve Horvath says, do you think the worker shortage looks bad for Dems? I know it's complicated. Well, that's what we talked about while you were gone, Mark. And as far as how it looks, I mean, I get, because we just talked about how the difference in like what's actually happening and how people perceive it is, of course, a gulf for a lot of people in this country. Yeah. But having said that, it's not, there is no worker shortage, you know, like that. It's all bullshit. Like it's capitalism at work, really. Like, if you want people to fucking work for you, make it worth it for them, unless you just are down with going back to slavery or whatever, which I'm sure many of them would be if they had the opportunity. But you know what I mean? It's like people have just decided, fuck you, it ain't worth that, you know? And
I mean, like, I don't know what, I mean, like the data doesn't show a worker shortage. I know some individual restaurants complain about not being able to fill staff, but also, like, holy shit, we just went through a pandemic where 600,000 to 1 million people died. One of the hardest hit sectors outside of nursing homes was restaurant workers. Maybe you can't find, your workers aren't coming back to work because they're fucking sick or dead, man. I don't know what to tell you. Like, this country is like, okay, so talk about how the labor shortage isn't showing up in the data. Like, if you want to blame like worker shortage on like the unemployment surplus, how come the states that have the biggest unemployment surpluses are having the least amount of worker shortages and the quickest turnaround of their economies? Like, California's not experiencing this. This is like people in Oklahoma where they not like it. I don't know. It's like, it seems like a meme started by the Chamber of Commerce, and like they're like,
right. Yeah,
the chamber's like 2 weeks away from reinstating the draft to like try to fucking
force people to work. Yeah.
run fajita poppers or whatever,
slavery or whatever. But
yeah.
We talked about last week, like, economists will tell you that in a scenario where you have a genuine labor shortage, like literally there is a labor shortage, the way the market responds to that is by increasing wages to incentivize people to work for them. And that is not happening. They just want to bitch about nobody being willing to do their bullshit for no money. Lauren Russell Pink says, glad you're back, Mark. And always good to see Trey. Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate it. I'm also thrilled he's back. Yeah. Are you glad to be back, Mark?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just, I know. I really am. Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking about, like, I saw our buddy Corey was in town this weekend doing the MTV Movie Awards. Shout out
Buttercream
Green.
If you missed that, look it up. Corey Forster, senior Georgia correspondent, was on the fucking MTV Movie Awards Sunday. So
yeah, he did the Buttercream Dream on stage to a bunch of teenagers because Leslie Jones wanted him to. It was really funny. I don't quite whatever. It's a crazy world. But I don't know. I was just thinking about our college football team name argument the other night and how people vote based upon dumb bullshit. And you're right. Like, I mean, like, you could give people all the best healthcare in the world, but if you try to if a bunch of woke kids try to make the Tennessee Volunteers change their name because of the origins of slavery or whatever in the Civil War, a Democrat would never win Tennessee, even if their policies were like 100-0.
Yeah, man. It's how culture be that way. Guest house writer said, Corey. Yes, we say the same thing. Love Corey. He's the best. Love y'all too. Love Mark. Thanks for coming back. And that's it for this week's edition of Weekly Skews. We'll see you